This is my second least favorite game of all time. I bought it for $2 years and years ago, and I never forced myself to get through it, but we're not leaving this video until I have, because I have things to say about this game and you're gonna listen, alright? Alright. The tutorial takes way too long. Like, you have to wait for Alfred to say everything before you can actually do it. Like, even if you know what to do, like, you know, to double jump and glide to the next ledge, you can't actually do it until Alfred tells you it's okay. And children aren't this stupid, so I don't get it. So, like, the game takes place in physical manifestations of everyone's various temptations, and the first temptation is chocolate. For Larry's, there's like a sugary, chocolatey sweet world that you platform around in. A consistent problem I've noticed with every platformer I've played that takes place in a chocolate wonderland setting or sugary candy wonderland setting like this is that they never do anything interesting with the theme. Like, you're always just platforming on floating platforms, but it's cookies or cake or something. And it's always low energy, always very sedated, which is the opposite of candy. The level design sets a standard for the rest of the game in that it's really boring. Mostly you just walk up to something and use one of your powers on it, like your power is a key. Like, we spray these buds with our power drencher to make them grow into platforms. By the way, the power drencher has energy drink in it and not water, but the entire game uses it like it's water instead of an energy drink. They even call the energy drink water at several points, so I really have absolutely no idea what they were going for. The only enemy out of the whole 3 enemies in this game that has any remotely challenging design are these temptation seekers. They chase Larry around, they seem to move at exactly the same speed as him, and you have to lure them into a nearby vent without getting clipped in the ass by them. The camera has a really nice idea of where it wants to go though, so sometimes while you're running from them, you can't adjust the camera to where you want it to be, which isn't very fun. The boss battle of Larry's Temptation is this really weird thing, where the bad apple will count up to a number, and if you're not standing on the right number, then you die. But like, this game is too complex for basic math. Like, anyone who doesn't know basic math wouldn't be playing this game. Like, if you can't count to 9, you're not playing LarryBoy. So this fight just doesn't make any sense to me. Also, even though this game is supposed to be educational and teach values to children, at no point does it go into detail on why eating a whole ton of sugar would be bad for you. The game just kind of goes, oh, it's bad to eat too much sugar, trust me, without explaining how it can severely fuck up your body and kill you. I feel like that's kind of important to mention. The second level is Mayor Blueberry's Temptation, and I feel like this is a good time to mention the way the story works is that this character named the Bad Apple runs around tempting everyone into Bumblyburg to giving in to their desires. And with Larry it makes the most sense because she's tempting him to give in to his desire to consume way too much fucking chocolate. But for everyone else it makes less sense. Like, in this one the mayor wants to look nice and we're stopping the Bad Apple from tempting her into spending too much time trying to look nice. This level is 1/2 Gorgeous Mansion and 1/2 Mine, and it's really hard to understand why. Maybe the idea, based on the fact that there are gems, is that the mine was mining for gems for Mayor Blueberry's clothes or something, like as accessories, but that doesn't really come up. This is easily the most boring level in the entire game, which is saying something, but it also has the best boss battle. The idea is that the Bad Apple uses these mirrors to light up the platforms and make them too hot to jump on, but also if you try and platform between them and accidentally hit a beam of light while you're platforming, you'll fall down between the platforms. It's actually not a bad platforming hazard. The rest of the game does not follow suit, though.
No!
I was so enraptured by these beautiful clothes. I had no idea it was such a big problem.
You can't be the mayor God wants you to be, if all you ever think about is how you look.
Larry, you have to, like, back up your statements with shit. You can't, like, just speak on behalf of God or something. Also, you basically just called her a whore. Larry, you basically just called the woman a whore. After Larry gets done bullying the mayor, you get access to a new grappling hook gimmick, which can be used to press switches or grapple places. But it's just, you know, it's just another key, like all of Larry's other abilities. A key you use to open doors. The next level is Petunia the Reporter's Temptation, and it takes place in, like, a video game. For what it's worth, this is one of the less boring levels, but the platforming is incredibly rudimentary. Like, you might as well play a Blitz Games game instead if you want this kind of platforming. And Blitz Games games have more entertaining gimmicks as well. Also, this isn't what video games look like. I would know, I've played them. This video game level is not what video games look like. There's a point in this level where the perspective switches entirely to 2D, and it took me forever to get out this was like a reference to old 2D video games, like LarryBoy is going, hey, remember old 2D video games? And I didn't get the reference because, again, this is not what video games look like, not even back then. There is a cool section where you're running away from a boulder, but the hazard placement is so boring that they could have done a lot more with it. And the boss battle of this level sadly sets the standard for the bosses in the rest of the game, where you just do the same exact thing 4 times without any variations whatsoever, like the same pattern, with not even slight variations in between. There's one more final gimmick where you mash X to catapult yourself long distances, which really is basically just the grappling hook again, but Larry sometimes shouts, "Here goes everything," when you use the catapult, which sounds way too cool for this game. The 4th level is the Fire Marshal's Temptation. The Fire Marshal likes toys, so you're doing things like rotating train sets to put the catapults in place, and there's a lot of cowboy and dinosaur and old night-themed toys, which isn't really the kind of toys that a toy collector would be collecting when this game came out. But I'm also someone who collects toys, so I notice that this game is barely toy-themed at all. Maybe it would be harder to notice if you didn't collect toys. I used to really hate this level, but it's become my favorite for having the best use of environmental platforming and the best use of Larry's abilities. Like, here's some really good environmental platforming that you're seeing. And you get to use Larry's abilities for more things than usual, like, for once, his abilities aren't just keys to open doors. The boss fight is the same as the last levels, though, where you have to do the same exact thing 4 times in a row, but this one requires more waiting because you have to wait for the train to be in the right spot for you to dump water on it. It just takes a really, really long time, and it's even weirder because the game stresses that you need to hurry, but even if you go as fast as you can, the boss fight still takes ages. The way this game handles its story and themes is just so weird. Like, I get the idea of someone going around making everyone give in to their temptations, but everyone after Larry is basically just a temptation of procrastination. Larry's temptation is more genuine, you know, not giving in to eating unhealthy foods. That's a very important lesson to learn, but everybody after that is just about procrastination. The mayor was procrastinating by picking out clothes instead of organizing the fair. The reporter was procrastinating away from her job by playing games. And the fire marshal was too distracted by toys to report when there were fires. Yes, procrastination is tempting, but don't you think there are some other topics you could tackle instead of just that, maybe, game? Temptation is a very broad idea. You have a lot to work with. The final temptation is the Baker's Temptation, and it's space-themed. It's not bad, it has some decent platforming, especially when compared to the rest of the game, but the method you use to progress can be confusing. Usually the game is really keen on holding your hand like it holds your hand over everything, but in this one you have to do things that I'm not quite sure I understand, like closing all the airlocks lowers a force field so you can proceed. There are some falling platforms, some really cool but generic looking sci-fi gates and stuff like that, and perhaps the only creative use of the slingshot in the entire game to cross a really large distance, but it's not very memorable. It's probably the second most forgettable level. That's weird to say in a game with only 5 levels. But you know, using the slingshot to get high in the air so you can glide down and avoid asteroids, sure, that's pretty alright. That's an alright hazard, I'll take that. And this boss fight is just like the last 2, doing the exact same thing 4 times with no variation. You move to a platform, you fire at a target with your power drencher, and when a laser's about to attack you, you pull up a force field so it doesn't shoot you. And there's no, like, incredibly anxious timing with any of these things. You have so long to react. So after the final level, there's a final boss in Bumbleberg itself, where you run around spraying all the webs that the bad apple put everywhere, and then jump up on top of her giant apple to spray her directly for some reason. That's never really explained. But it might not be super clear why. This is my second least favorite game. May look like a mediocre platformer from what you've seen, and that's fair. But, you know, I can explain why it's my second least favorite very easily. It's just that it doesn't do anything with what it has. There are so many games I love that are way worse than this, objectively worse than this fully functioning game. It's just that this game does not do anything creative with what it's given. The level themes barely match up with what you do in the levels. It's hard to distinguish one level from the next except for visually. With the exception of maybe the second level's boss, the bosses all have very low effort patterns and are incredibly lacking in creativity. Just the whole game in general is lacking in creativity, which is a shame because some of the ideas are really cool, such as the abilities coming from Larry's cape having the ability to transform into different things. Like, the ability for Larry to transform into a heavyweight using his cape could probably have been used to do more things than open doors. Do you know how many times it's used to do more things than open doors? Once. One time. Most of the abilities just act like some kind of key to open something, and the difference between a game like this and one of Blitz Games' 3D platformers is that the keys they give you are more entertaining to look at and use. You only get like 5 keys in this game. None of them look fun, none of them are fun to use, and they're not very loud or bouncy or enjoyable. This game is surprisingly low on joy. But yeah, that was LarryBoy and the Bad Apple. It's a very bland 3D platformer. It's perfectly functional. Maybe if you want to play a really boring 3D platformer, it'll suit you just fine. But it's one of my least favorite games simply because it refuses to do anything interesting at all. Go play Break Into Rules instead. That's a lot like this game. It has a lot of the same faults, but even that's better than this. Alright, no more LarryBoy. We're done. No more LarryBoy ever again.